The worst part about getting canceled on isn't the cancellation. It's the 40 minutes you spent on the subway home, still wearing the shirt you ironed, trying to figure out what to do with your hands. I was 29, a junior architect at a mid-size firm in downtown Vancouver, and I had somehow become the kind of person who got dressed up for a woman who texted me 17 minutes before our reservation to say she wasn't in the right headspace. 17 minutes. Not enough time to cancel at the restaurant without the host giving you that look. So I went anyway. I sat at a corner table at a place called Pastoral on Granville, ordered the halibut, and told the server my friend was running a bit late. She brought me bread. I ate all of it. By the time I got back to our apartment, it was raining in that West Coast way that isn't dramatic, just relentless. My jacket was damp. My shoes made embarrassing sounds in the stairwell. I had a bottle of Riesling in my bag because I'd stopped at the wine shop on the corner thinking it would be romantic, and then felt too stupid to return it, and too sad to drink it alone in the elevator. Our apartment was on the 4th floor of a converted building in Mount Pleasant, the kind of place with exposed brick and radiators that clanged in February like they were trying to escape. The front door to our unit caught on the frame unless you lifted the handle at exactly the right angle. I did that slowly because it was close to 10, and because my roommate, Cassie Norwood, kept inconsistent hours. Cassie was 27, a freelance photographer who shot commercial work during the week and personal projects on weekends, and who had the specific talent of making a secondhand couch look like a deliberate design choice. We'd been roommates for 8 months, ever since my previous place went condo and I needed somewhere fast. She'd answered my ad on Facebook Marketplace, which already said something about both of us, and told me later she'd agreed to meet me because my listing was the only one that specified no strong opinions about thermostat settings, which she called a green flag of rare intelligence. I told her that was the nicest thing anyone had said about my ability to be wrong quietly. We were friends, the kind that felt easy and solid without needing to be defined. That was the word I reached for when my brain did something inconvenient, like noticing the way she got very still when she was concentrating on an edit, or how she laughed first with her eyes before the sound arrived, or the particular shape her voice took when she was tired and still asked how my day went. Easy. Meaning uncomplicated. Meaning don't wreck the best living situation you've had since you moved out of your parents' place in Burnaby at 22. That night, the apartment smelled like coffee and whatever candle she kept burning on the bookshelf. The kitchen light was on. Cassie was at the island with her laptop open, a mug at her elbow, her hair pulled up in the way she did when she was working late, messy, unself-conscious, a pencil tucked into it she'd probably forgotten about. She looked up when I came in. Her eyes went to the wine bag, then to my face, then back to the wine bag. "You're home early," she said. "Relatively. How was?" She paused. Read something in my expression. Oh no. I set the Riesling on the counter with more care than it deserved. "She canceled. Before or after you got there?" "After I ordered bread." Cassie closed her laptop. That was the thing about her. She didn't half pay attention. When something mattered, she put everything else down. Theo. That was my name, Theo Marsh, and normally I liked the way she said it. Quick and a bit dry, like punctuation. Tonight it landed differently. I shrugged out of my damp jacket and hung it by the door. "It's fine." Very polite text. Said she wasn't in the right headspace, which I respect, honestly. Headspace is real. I leaned against the counter. I ate the halibut. Was it good? It was excellent. So the evening wasn't a total loss. Cassie tilted her head. What was her name again? Mira. We'd been talking for 3 weeks. She studied environmental law. She had opinions about the Salish Sea that I found genuinely attractive. And now, I have a bottle of Riesling and opinions about public transit. Cassie stood, came around the island, and I understood she was going for it. Her fingers were cold from the mug. She read the label with the first expression she used for everything, like each thing deserved its full attention. "This is actually good," she said. "It was supposed to be a gesture. It's still a gesture." She looked at me. "You want to open it?" "I want to stop being a person who bought wine for a date that didn't happen." "Open it anyway." She was already getting glasses down from the cabinet. "It's Thursday. That's reason enough." I watched her find the corkscrew in the drawer that also held dead batteries and a tape measure and a takeout menu from a place that had closed. She moved around the kitchen like she'd lived there forever, which in some ways she had, in ways that mattered more than Elise. I really thought this one was different, I said, which I hadn't meant to say aloud. Cassie didn't look up from the bottle. Different how? Like, I tried to find the right word. Like I was actually looking forward to it instead of just hoping it would go well. There's a difference. Usually I go on dates hoping they'll be okay. This time I was excited. I paused. I ironed this shirt. She looked at my shirt. I know. I watched you iron it. You watched me iron it? I was in the living room. You iron like it's a confrontation. Focus. You were talking to the caller I had been. A little. That caller was difficult. Cassie smiled, slow and sideways, and the kitchen felt slightly less catastrophic. She poured 2 glasses and slid one toward me. We stood on opposite sides of the island, which was where we usually ended up when conversations became real ones. The island felt important suddenly, like a boundary I was glad existed. She said the right headspace thing, I said. Yeah, which means she'd already decided and just didn't want to be the one to call it off before I'd committed to the commute. Cassie wrapped both hands around her glass. Or she genuinely got scared. Of what? Of it maybe going well. I looked at her. She was looking at the wine. There was something careful in the way she'd said it, something that slipped out and then got very quiet. That's a generous read, I said. I'm a generous person. You once left a passive-aggressive note for a guy who parked in your spot for 4 minutes. He knew what he was doing. She glanced up then, and her expression shifted slightly. Not away from me, but inward, like she was checking something. Were you excited about her specifically, or just about being ready? The question landed in a different register. I set my glass down on the counter. There was a water stain near the edge from a mug I'd put there without a coaster 3 months ago. I'd looked at that stain through conversations I couldn't have with anyone else. Both, maybe, I said. I broke up with Aaron 18 months ago, and I think I've spent most of that time convincing myself I was fine and then proving I wasn't by doing exactly this. I gestured vaguely at my ironed shirt, getting ready for the right thing before I actually am. Cassie nodded. Not the kind that dismissed what you said, the kind that meant she was keeping it, but I wanted to be excited, I said. That has to count for something. It does, she said quietly. And then, after a pause that had weight to it, you're not broken, you know, you're just slow to trust that good things don't have expiration dates. I looked at her. She was looking at the water stain now. A small tension had arrived in her jaw, the one she got when she'd said more than she planned to. That's annoyingly accurate, I said. I have a lot of time to observe you. We share a bathroom. You've been profiling me. I prefer the word studying. She picked up her glass. You talk to the shower too. That's just thinking out loud. You argued with a podcast. He was wrong about brutalist architecture. She laughed, and I felt the room realign. That was always how it worked with Cassie. The weight of a conversation would build, and then she'd say something sharp and ordinary, and suddenly I could breathe again. We moved to the living room without deciding to. She folded herself into the armchair with her wine. I took the couch. Outside the window, Vancouver kept raining, the city lights going soft and orange through the water on the glass. Tell me something good, she said. The halibut. Besides the halibut. I thought about it. I finished the accessibility revisions on the Burnaby project, the whole ramp integration. It's actually going to work. Her face shifted into genuine warmth. Theo, that's huge. You've been on that for months. The engineering team had notes. When don't they? 47 notes. And I addressed 39 and redirected the other 8 into a philosophy of design conversation that eventually exhausted everyone into agreeing with me. She pointed at me. That's your move. It's a legitimate move. It's bureaucratic judo. It's architecture. She was smiling again, and I was smiling, and for a few minutes we were just 2 people who liked each other's company sitting with decent wine on a Thursday night while the rain did its thing. I had been too close to this to see it clearly for a long time. That was when she said it. I'd stood up to refill my glass and made some comment about the wine being better than the date, and I was already turning toward the kitchen when she said quietly, almost to the window, I would have shown up. I stopped. Sorry? She looked up. The color in her face had changed. I said, I would have shown up. A pause. To the restaurant, I'm just saying. I stood there with my empty wine glass for a moment that felt very long. As a friend? I said. Like, no. She said it with the particular bluntness she used when she was scared and decided to be honest anyway. Not as a friend. The apartment was extremely quiet. I walked back to the couch slowly, set my glass on the coffee table, and sat down. Cassie was watching me with the expression of someone who has just stepped off a curb and is waiting to find out if they're going to trip. Cassie, you can pretend you didn't hear me, if it's weird. I heard you. Both options are on the table. I don't want the other option. She blinked. The tension in her shoulders shifted. I've been trying to say something like that for about 4 months, she said, and the timing has been continuously terrible, which I was using as a sign from the universe. And then tonight you came home with expensive wine and a sad shirt and something just. She pressed her lips together. Something just came out. A sad shirt. You were talking to the caller, Cassie. I know. I know. It's complicated. She turned her glass in her hands. We share a lease and a fridge. And I have opinions about how you load the dishwasher that I've been holding back for months because I didn't want to get into it. You've been holding back? Strategically. I looked at her. 8 months of small things rearranged themselves in my memory. The time she'd brought me coffee without asking before a 7 a.m. site visit. The way she'd listened when I told her about the errand situation, really listened, without fixing, without performing sympathy. The fact that she'd remembered which cereal I liked when she did the grocery run without ever making it into a thing. When did it start? I asked. She groaned softly, leaning her head back. The day you fixed the front door. That was week 2. You were very competent about it. I just lifted the handle. You figured out the lift without being told. I found that. She stopped. Anyway, no, finish that sentence. She gave me a look. I found it attractive. In a completely inconvenient way that I subsequently filed under not my problem and left there for 8 months. I felt something in my chest shift the way a locked window shifts when you find the right angle, and it opens without warning. I'd been so careful, so deliberately not thinking about her in ways that felt dangerous, but the care itself was its own kind of evidence. I kept telling myself it was just because it was easy, I said. Living with you, that I was confusing comfort with something else. She watched me, waiting. But I noticed when you came home, I said. Not in a passive way, in a, I heard your key and I became more awake kind of way. She was very still. I noticed when you were tired before you said anything. I noticed when a shoot had gone badly because you got quiet in a specific way that was different from your other quiet. I noticed. I stopped. This is a lot. Keep going, she said. Almost no volume. I noticed that you're the first person I want to tell things to. Good things. Frustrating things. I found out we got the Burnaby contract extended, and my first thought was to come home and tell you. I looked at her across the coffee table. That probably should have told me something earlier. Cassie set her wineglass down. She crossed the room and sat on the couch, close, leaving a deliberate few inches between us, the kind of distance that acknowledged it was there. So, what do we do? She said. Not a question, exactly. I don't know. That's not very architectural of you. Even the best structures start with a problem that doesn't have an obvious solution yet. Her mouth softened. She looked at her hands. I'm not asking you to have it all figured out. I needed you to know. Even if tonight was terrible timing, tonight was actually perfect timing, I said. She raised her eyes. Because I came home thinking about someone else and realized in about 20 minutes that I have been thinking about you without letting myself call it that. For months. I turned slightly toward her. And now I don't have to not call it that anymore. Cassie let out a breath that might have been a laugh, or relief, or both. She reached over and picked a piece of lint off my ironed sleeve, which was an entirely ordinary gesture that somehow undid me completely. I'm still going to tell you about the dishwasher, she said. I'm ready to hear it. The glasses go on the top rack. That's where I put them, on the side. They go in the middle. Cassie, I have strong feelings, I know. I've been watching you have them for 8 months. She smiled then, not the quick one she used for deflection, but the real one that arrived slowly and changed her whole face. I reached over and touched the back of her hand. She turned it palm up. Can I take you somewhere tomorrow? I said. Not here. Somewhere you have to put shoes on for. Is this you asking me on a date? Yes. Officially, with my whole chest. She looked at our hands. Her thumb moved across my palm, barely there, just enough. Where? There's that spot in Gastown you mentioned in September, the one that does the small plates. She went very still. You remembered that. You said the lighting was good for someone like me. Someone like you? Someone who photographs badly in overhead lighting. I said you had structure. That overhead lighting flattened structure. She looked at me. I was being nice. You were being accurate. And you were paying attention. I was always paying attention, I said. I just didn't know what to do with it yet. Cassie looked at me for a long moment. Then she leaned in and kissed me, quick and warm, more an answer than a question. I didn't have time to be nervous about it. When she pulled back, her eyes were very close. Okay, she said. Okay? The Gastown place. Tomorrow, she considered. But if you load the dishwasher wrong before then, I'm rescinding the date. The glasses will be in the middle. I need them centered. None of that slightly to the left thing. Cassie, I'm serious. I know. It's one of my favorite things about you. She looked at me for a second like I'd said something unexpectedly true. Then she picked up her wine glass, settled back against the cushions, and tucked her feet up. Tell me more about the Burnaby ramp, she said. You actually want to hear about it. I've been listening to you figure it out for 3 months. I want the ending. So I told her. And she listened the way she always listened, not waiting for her turn, actually there. At some point, the wine ran out. At some point, the rain stopped. At some point, Cassie fell asleep mid-sentence about cantilevered platforms, which was so specific and so her, that I sat there for a minute not wanting to move. I covered her with the blanket from the armchair. She made a small sound but didn't wake up. On my way to bed, I turned off the kitchen light. The Riesling bottle stood empty on the counter. The whole apartment felt different. Not unfamiliar, but awake, like something that had been holding its breath had finally let go. I had come home that night humiliated in a damp jacket, carrying wine for a date that hadn't happened. And somehow I'd stumbled into the truest conversation of my year. The next evening, Cassie wore a rust-colored jacket I hadn't seen before, and her camera bag over one shoulder, not because she was working, but because she said she never went to a new place without it, which I'd stopped finding eccentric months ago and started finding just her. We walked down to Gastown in the kind of October evening that Vancouver does when it decides to be beautiful about it. Cool and clear and smelling faintly of cedar and salt water. Our hands brushed twice on the way down Corral Street. The third time I caught hers and held on. She glanced at me and didn't say anything, just adjusted her grip slightly so it fit better. The restaurant was small and warm, and the lighting was, as advertised, excellent for structure. We ordered too many small plates and stayed 2 hours past when we'd planned to. I learned she'd almost studied architecture before photography pulled her away. She learned I'd played in a folk band in university and categorically refused to elaborate. She threatened to search my name on Bandcamp. You won't find anything. I played under a pseudonym. What pseudonym? I'm not giving you that, Theo. Absolutely not. She found it 3 days later. I won't say how. The playlist she made afterward contained one of our songs and was called Bureaucratic Judo, which told me she'd been paying more attention than I'd known, for longer than I'd known, and that we were both, apparently, very bad at hiding things from each other. We took it slow, which mostly meant we were ridiculous about it in small ways. We'd reach for the same thing in the kitchen and then get self-conscious in a way that hadn't existed before and then laugh at ourselves for it. We went on actual dates, a matinee at the Cinematheque, the winter market on the drive, once a very ambitious attempt at cross-country skiing at Cyprus that ended with Cassie in a snowbank and me completely failing to be helpful because I was laughing too hard to function. She has the photo. She refuses to delete it. When the January lease renewal came up, we sat down at the kitchen island like adults and had a serious conversation about it. We were each very calm, very measured, very reasonable. If something goes wrong, Cassie said. If something goes wrong, I agreed. We looked at each other. The thing is, she said, something's been right for a while. We just weren't calling it that. I picked up the pen, signed my name. Slid the form across the island. She signed below mine. We put the document in the mail the next morning and walked back from the mailbox in the rain, her hand tucked through my arm, her camera bag knocking against my hip. Still think it was good timing? She asked. Thursday night. The wine and the sad shirt. I thought about Mira's text, the empty seat at Pastoral, the 40 minutes on the subway trying to figure out what to do with my hands. Worst evening, I said. Perfect timing. Cassie leaned her head briefly against my shoulder as we walked. I would have shown up, she said again, softer. The same words as before, but they meant something different now. Not an admission, a fact we'd both decided to live inside of. I know, I said. That's the part I should have figured out sooner. She squeezed my arm. We hip-checked the front door together. She knew the trick by now too, and went upstairs into the warm apartment, and I put the kettle on, and she took her jacket off. And the radiator clanged once like it was making a point, and it was the most ordinary evening of my life, and I didn't want to be anywhere else.